Hey, I'm Liv, welcome back to my channel Endless Pages, and welcome to today's video, which is a book unhaul. Hi, thank you so much for watching today's video. I'm going to be chatting with you guys about some books that I am unhauling from my collection. There's a few reasons that I'm unhauling today. I didn't like the book, I'm never going to read it, and limited space is a big component in why I'm getting rid of some of these books. So I thought I would just briefly chat with you guys about each book and why I'm removing it from my collection. The first book I'm unhauling is Neon Gods by Katie Roberts. This is a smutty Persephone and Hades retelling. I didn't absolutely hate this book. The romance side I really enjoyed. That was fun and I had a really fun time with that. I think there was some elements of the romance that were teased and never really carried through. I don't know if they come up later in the books, but yeah, they never really went there themselves, so I was like, oh, what a tease. But I remember I really appreciated the conversations around consent in this book. I was a little bit worried because it's like a dark romance that it would be like kind of toxic dark romance where like consent, the line just gets absolutely blurred or it's just non-existent, which I just wouldn't want to read. So I appreciated for a darker romance that there was that discussion around consent, and I think even the discussion around enthusiastic consent, which was very much appreciated and I felt really right in this kind of context. So I really appreciated that. Honestly, that just made it hotter for me because I'm like, yes, it's yes, enthusiastic consent. So I really appreciated that. I think where I didn't like this book was the actual writing quality itself. I think that it's not very well written other than the romance scenes, so that's unfortunate, but I do like that I have started to explore these kind of books and see what I like and what I don't like in terms of the romance. So I'm not upset that I read this book. Like, I still think I had a good time with the romance, but the writing wasn't enough to make me want to continue on with this series, unfortunately. I do have another book on my shelf by her, Court of the Vampire Queen, so I'll be interested to see if I have the same thoughts. I'm not going to just unhaul Court of the Vampire Queen without giving it a go, but if it's any indication, if it's similar to this book, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to have a good time with it, but I'll give it a go. So I'm unhauling this one. Book number 2 I'm unhauling is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I really didn't like this book. This is set in Japan and it's set in this cafe where you drink a cup of coffee and you are transported back in time. And is that the best way to describe it? Yeah, so it's like 4 different stories within one book of people that come into the cafe and kind of want to have a second go at a conversation or a moment that's happened in their life. Yeah, I think I've explained that okay. Yeah, so I didn't like this book because I don't think the writing was very good. I don't know if it's a translation issue. I don't know if it's the original author that I don't like the writing of, because this is originally in Japanese, so it could have been maybe translated weirdly. I don't know. Second of all, I think the 4 stories were so short that I never was able to really emotionally connect with any of. I mean, I've read shorter books, I guess, and connected with emotionally with the characters, but I just didn't feel like an emotional connection to any of these characters. So when emotional moments were happening, I was like, I feel nothing. I feel absolutely nothing towards this moment. I feel like I should be feeling all the feelings. I should be like crying, I should be tearing up reading this, but I felt nothing. I just felt no connection to any of the stories. And also like a little bit sexist. Like the way this author wrote about some of the female characters was very iffy and very sexist, and I was like, I'm not enjoying reading this, to be honest. I didn't think this was a very good book. This is such a popular series and I've never heard anyone badmouth it, other than a colleague of mine actually didn't like it. But I didn't like this book at all. It was really a struggle to finish, even though it's tiny, and I didn't feel any connection to any of the characters and wasn't emotionally moved like I feel like I was meant to be. I'm going to talk about these next lot of books kind of together, and that's because they all have semi-similar reason for unhauling. First being space and second being rereadability. So I kind of in the future only want books on my shelf that I loved so much that I want to reread over and over and over again, or definitely will reread in some point in my life. I'm a huge rereader, and if I love a series, I will read it over and over and over again. And I kind of just don't want to have books on my shelf because maybe I enjoyed them when I was like 13. Although saying that, there are series that I will never remove off my shelf because I love them at that point in my life and the nostalgia attached with it. But if they're not a favourite like teenage series, like, I don't know, like the City of Bones series or something like that, or the Hunger Games series or something like that, why have them on my shelf? They're just taking up space where new favourite books could be going on the shelf. So I hope that makes sense. But yeah, the first one is Dangerous Lies by Becca Fitzpatrick. This is the same author of the Hush Hush series, which is a series I know is horrible, but I will never unhaul because of just like, it was one of my favorite series as a teenager. So I think I read this book because it's by that author. I remember it maybe being like a murder mystery or something. I genuinely cannot remember for the life of me what this book is about. I remember enjoying it when I was a teenager, but I don't really remember what happens in it at all, and I will never ever touch this book again. I will continue to reread the Hush series over and over, even though I've read them recently as an adult, and oh my god, they're horrible, but I'm never going to touch this book again. It's taking up space on my shelf. Maybe another teenager can find this at a little free library and fall in love with Becca Fitzgerald, but yeah, I'm never going to touch this book again. It's just taking up space. Continuing on with that theme of I can't remember anything about this book, I Killed Zoe Spanos by Kit Frick. I remember enjoying this at the time I read it. Again, I was probably a teenager when I read it, but or maybe a young adult because I would have had money for hardbacks, so maybe like early 20s. Yeah, this is, again, I can't remember what this is about. I think it's about like a murder mystery again, like set in summer, in this like young teenage girls like holidays or something. But I remember nothing about it, absolutely nothing. So clearly it's not that amazing of a book that it's made an impact on me, so I don't remember anything about this book at all, and I will never pick it up again. I was scouring my shelves and I was like, I haven't thought about this book in like 15 years, so not that long, like 10 years. So clearly an unremarkable, unmemorable book that I don't need to have on my shelves. Speaking of books I don't need on my shelves, we have two John Greens, Paper Towns and Looking for Alaska. Again, when I was a teenager, I ate this shit up. I loved these two books so much, especially Looking for Alaska. Like, this was a favorite. And again, I'm not getting rid of all books from my childhood or teenager years off my shelf. There's some that I will never touch and will never move. These ones, not a core memory, not core series. Looking for Alaska maybe more so. But again, I'm never going to reread these books. They have been sitting there on my shelf since I was a teenager, and I'm like almost 28 now, untouched. When am I ever going to pick these books up again? Let's give them a second life and give them to someone who's actually going to read them. And traumatize another young generation of teenagers with John Green. Pass the trauma on. The next series I'm going to talk about I had such a mixed experience reading, and that is the Caravel series by Stephanie Garber. Also, good riddance to this ugly ass copy of Legendary that doesn't match. So ugly. Good riddance off my shelf. Yeah, so this is the Caravel series by Stephanie Garber. This is like a YA fantasy series about two sisters who go to this event, get a ticket to this, I don't know what you call it, mystery event called Caravel, which is a bunch of actors, yeah, set up this game kind of thing, I guess you'd say, where you have to kind of interact with the actors and figure out clues and puzzles, and yeah, your aim is you're trying to win Caravel and win a super special prize from the mysterious creator of Caravel legend. So I read this when I was young, Caravel, probably a teenager, gave it 5 stars at the time, loved it, thought it was so magical, and I loved the romances in it. I loved the mystery and intrigue and the puzzles, and like the final scene was so intense, and I really loved it. And then I read Legendary, didn't like it as much, but still had a fun time reading it. I think my big issue with this book was we had the introduction of the sister's perspective. The first book is just Scarlet. The first book is just Scarlet's perspective. The second book is Scarlet and Teller's perspective, and I didn't like Teller's perspective as much as Scarlet. But I still had a good time with this. And then I hated Finale because it was pretty much Scarlett's perspective. And I hated it so much. It felt so unnecessary of a trilogy. Like, I feel like it could have just stayed a duology. I feel like this book, yeah, just really, I don't know, the characters felt different and written differently. It just didn't have that same spark. And by the third book, I was like, okay, I've had enough Caravel. We're playing the game for a third time. I've had enough of this game. Yeah, and it kind of lost its spark a little bit for me, and I took forever to read this because I absolutely despised it. Actually, I forgot, this one, it took me a couple of goes and I thought I was going to hate it, but I think I attempted it like 4 or 5 times and then finally was like, I'm reading this fucking book, and then really loved it. So I don't know what happened. This was, yeah, a very mixed experience of reading, but I will never reread this series. I hated the final book. It kind of ruined the whole series for me. And again, this is ugly, not matching covers, so good riddance. The final 2 books on my, I didn't necessarily hate them, but I just don't want them on my shelves, is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas and The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. This one I had such a weird mixed experience with. I enjoyed it. It is about a 15-year-old with severe autism, and he is trying to solve the mystery of who murdered his neighbour's dog. I thought this was really eye-opening. I've heard such mixed thoughts on the representation from people with autism. I've heard some autistic people review it and say they felt very seen. I've heard other autistic people say this is kind of setting a bad example for boxing all people with autism into one kind of personality set, and saying autism is such a diverse disability that, you know, not all autistic people are the same. So I've heard such mixed opinions, so I can't really speak of the representation one because I'm not autistic, and yeah, I've heard such like mixed opinions on it. I did kind of struggle. There is a lot of maths in this book, and I did find it so very hard to get through when we just had pages of calculations and stuff, and that really like pulled me out of the story. So yeah, I had a bit of a mixed time with this one. I was emotionally moved by it. And then The Hate You Give I thought was a really, really good book, but again, it's YA. I'm definitely not a young adult anymore, and I'm not going to reread this. And I think this is a really great, important book for young people to read, and yeah, I think it will serve other young people to read this, and yeah, it will teach them a very good lesson. Next up, I'm on Unhauling the Stolen Heir by Holly Black. This is part of the Elfhame Cruel Prince universe. The Cruel Prince series is one of my favourite series ever. Speaking of rereading earlier, I think it's time for a reread of that series. I love it so much, so much. I think it's a great series. This was such a disappointing book. I was so excited to read it because it's kind of it's set after the end of the Cruel Prince trilogy, and we follow kind of a side character from that series. I was so disappointed. I thought this was really bad, and I can't remember her name. The main character's name is Surin. She just felt like a carbon copy of Jude from the Cruel Prince series. I was like, oh, we're just rewriting the character to I don't know, because we can't think of anything unique or different, so it's just like a carbon copy and paste of Jude in the main character of this book, even though she's meant to be a completely different woman, and that really took me out. I was like, oh, it's just Jude written slightly different. And I felt no connection to the plot of this book. I found it quite painful to get through, and it was so disappointing because I loved the Cruel Prince series so much, and then to read this new one in the universe and hate it felt like a betrayal. Like, I felt like I was betraying Holly Black by not liking this book. But yeah, I didn't like it. Can anyone tell me if the series gets better? Because I know there's other books in this series now, but I don't think I would want to continue. But if you can convince me, but either way, this is going off my collection. Next up, I'm unhauling The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling. Boy, was this book bad. I listened to this on audio, and I think if I wasn't audiobooking it, it would have been a DNF a lot sooner, and I found this so incredibly boring. Basically, it's about a woman that, actually the blurb will probably help explain it better than I will. She's like kind of molded into this like suit thing for this exploration mission to get money, like through caves. But the woman that's meant to be like leading her through is not being completely honest by the sounds of it. And she's kind of trapped in this tunnel and she doesn't know whether to trust the person that's meant to be guiding her through, and sus things are happening that are not quite right. But she can't really say anything because she's kind of lied to be there. So I was wanting a really claustrophobic horror, but this was so incredibly boring. Nothing happens in this entire book. And when things did start to happen, it was the same scene, just slightly differently written every time. So it felt like the same thing was happening to her over and over and over and over. And if you are doing the same scary scene a million times, it's not going to be scary because I've read it about a million times. This was like the least intense horror thing I've ever read in my life, and I can't believe you can classify this as horror because it was not scary at all. It was mind-numbingly boring. The next two books I'm just going to briefly mention because I don't want to bring attention to this author because he doesn't deserve it. We have Jasper Jones and Honey Bee by Craig Silvey. If you're Australian, you probably understand straight away while I'm unhauling these. If you're not Australian and don't know who Craig Silvey is, he was a big part of the Australian writing community, one of our biggest authors, I'd say. Well, was, and he was a big YA and junior author. Recently, he was found caught red-handed by Australian police, doing something absolutely unforgivable and disgusting, and I don't want to support him anymore, and I don't want these on my shelf. Okay, the next book I'm unhauling is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. Don't panic, I love the Heartstopper series, but when I used to spend way more money on books than I do now, I bought the TV show edition of Heartstopper, and you know, normally I'm one that is like, fuck TV show and movie covers of books, they're so ugly, but because they recreated the actual covers with the actors, I thought it was pretty cute. But she's just taking up space on my shelf. I already have a copy of Heartstopper that I'm never getting rid of, so I don't need this on my shelf, and yeah. Sorry, I love Heartstopper. Don't worry, I love it. And then the other one I'm getting rid of is The Lives of Saints by Leigh Bardugo. This is like, I don't know what you call it, a compendium? That's probably not the right word. This is from the universe of the, oh my god, what is it called? Shadow and Bones series, which again I had a very mixed experience with, and I think I unhauled in a previous unhaul video, but oh, there's a bookmark in there. I don't want to unhaul that. Yeah, this is like, I think a bunch of like stories about the saints from this universe. I attempted reading this once and got bored. I'm never going to read this. I didn't super love the Shadow and Bone series, but Six of Crows, two of the best books ever. And I now think, I obviously again bought this when I was spending more money on books and not being as selective with my books, that things like this are such a scam to me. Like, I don't know why it boils my blood so much, but I'm like, this is such a money-making scam. Anytime an author writes like a guide to the universe or, you know, like something like this, I'm like, this is a scam to make money. I know that's their job, to make money, but it just like infuriates me. I'd rather borrow something like this from the library if I wanted to, you know, get details about the universe that I loved, but yeah, I'm never going to read this. So the next two books I'm going to talk about together because they're similar books and I'm unhauling them for quite similar reasons. So first up we have Dark Corners by Megan Golden, and then we have Leave the Girls Behind by Jacqueline Bublitz. So Dark Corners is a sequel to The Night Swim, which is one of the best books I have ever read in my entire life. I highly recommend you audiobook it because the audiobook is fantastic. But I also highly recommend you check the trigger warnings before you read it. Really heavy content. So yeah, that is like the first one follows a podcaster as she is going to this small town to cover a rape trial, a very high profile rape trial of the town's like golden boy, as he is accused of rape. And then there's also other elements in The Night Swim, like there's another mystery that's kind of unraveling at the same time, and it's similar themes of violence against women and women's voices being silenced, and yeah, justice for women. And then Leave the Girls Behind is by the author of Before You Knew Her Name. This is like not a sequel, it's just another standalone story, but again, the first book was a story about this girl that gets murdered, and how when we get obsessed with true crime, we kind of forget about the victims and their stories and focus on the killer's story and learning about him. So that book is about giving the victim a voice. So then I read these two books after reading two, and Before You Knew My Name, again, like The Night Swim, was one of my favourite books I've ever read, and it's also by an Australian author. So then I read two books by, I hope this is not confusing, I then read other books by that author and hated them. Dark Corners is a sequel to Night Swim, so we follow the same podcast host as she investigates a new case, which is like this missing, I meant to say, influencer. And it was full of this is like a female, not that old woman, like not even middle-aged, I don't think, woman, writing about influencers. Like, it felt like when you watch a movie written by like 70-year-old white executives in a boardroom that have no idea how young people talk or no intention to learn, and write dialogue for a young person, and it sounds awful, and it's full of like trendy words that they've heard their children say or something, that by the time the movie comes out it's about like 2 years old. So yeah, it felt like that in terms of how they wrote influencers in this book, like stereotypical caricature of influencers. They're all conceited, they're all hopeless, horrible people, which is not the truth. Like, not all influencers are like that. Sure, there's very conceited influencers who don't use their fame and fortune for good and are just there to make a quick buck, but it just felt really silly compared to the serious tone of the first book. And the first book had so much to say about rape and trying to get something like that through to court, and how hard that is, and you know how easy it is for a popular, well-known person to be judged based on how people think he is because he's so talented, and he's a good boy, he could never do that. How dare we destroy his life over this accusation. And this book is just like, influencers are bad and selfish and conceited. And the mystery was just not at all interesting to me, and it felt all very silly. Kind of similar vibes with this one. The first book is a really serious tone about the absolute wasted life of this poor victim, of how much potential she had, how she had people that loved her, how she had passions, and how she could have left such an impact on the world, and because of a man and his violent tendencies, that was cut short, and so much wasted potential of a human life. And then this book was about like a girl that was kind of like haunted by, like she was kind of just speaking to dead people. And again, just like Dark Corners, compared to her other book, the tone felt silly, and it just felt like it was written, both of these books felt like they were written by completely different authors. So it was quite funny that I had very similar experiences with two different authors, but with similar kind of vibes in the books. So yeah, long story short, I don't know if that explanation made sense at all, but that's why I'm unhauling both of these books. Next book I'm unhauling is Clara and the Sun by Kazu Ishiguro. I hated this book. This is quite a popular book, and quite a popular author, so I am very sad I didn't like it. This is about Clara, who is like an artificial intelligence type robot, and in this world these robots are kind of used as companionship. And we follow Clara, who is desperate to get adopted by a family and find her child that she could be a companion to. And she gets adopted by this family where, well, this mum and daughter, where the daughter is very sick. We don't really know, it's never named what the daughter has, but it is clearly a very serious, potentially terminal illness that she has. And she has really good and bad days. I think I said this when I reviewed this book earlier this year, but my problem with this book is because it had so much potential to be a commentary on the dangers of artificial intelligence and the dangers that we're already seeing happening in real life. I've already seen articles about this, of people making these incredibly unhealthy connections with artificial intelligence, and people that are so lonely and isolated and vulnerable being yeah, making these incredibly toxic relationships with a computer program, and the dangers that can do to their well-being and their safety and their mental health. And this book felt like it was trying to get there. It was trying to say, without spoiling it, Clara was brought into this family for a very toxic reason, and that was one of the only scenes I liked in this book, was the realization of why Clara was brought into this family. And I was like, holy shit, we're actually finally going somewhere with this plot. This is going to be a commentary on how dangerous and toxic this is, and how creepy that this is just like a dystopian novel that's absolutely reflecting what's happening right now. And then it just never commented on it. It brought it up, but never explored that more. It just happened to be one scene. And I was like, why are we not talking about this? Feels like the whole point of this novel and what I think the author is trying to say here. And then it's just like, it's never mentioned again. So yeah, this book felt like it was trying to say something but didn't end up saying anything at all. It was really boring, and we spent most of the book with the AI Clara trying to get in contact with the son, who she thinks is a god. So yeah, this is really disappointing, and it wasn't the anti-AI warning that I wanted it to be, because I think that that's a topic that I'm really interested in reading about, because I'm very scared about how quickly we are accepting artificial intelligence into everyday life, and the dangers of generative AI in terms of revenge porn and women's safety and the creative industry, and losing our critical thinking skills and knowing what is reliable information, and how it's helping spread disinformation, and all of the horrible, and let alone the environmental factors of AI and the environmental damage that AI will do and the water it will take up. So yeah, it's just, I wanted it to say something about AI, and it just didn't say anything, and it was so boring. And the final scene was so weird and brought back a character that had no emotional impact on the whole book, and it was just all over the place. The next two books I'm not going to really talk about in detail, but that is Paper Girls Volume 1 and Paper Girls Volume 2. I think I got this at a live blind book sale for really cheap. I now know why. Someone donated them. This is just like set in the 80s about 4 like paper delivery girls on Halloween, and they uncover this big conspiracy, I think. I was really looking forward to reading this series. I was like, oh, it's like maybe like a fantasy dystopian with 4 women as like the main characters. That sounds really cool. Getting involved in a big like conspiracy. I love the trope, I guess you'd call it, of young people uncovering like a big conspiracy, getting pulled into this dangerous world, like Stranger Things, for example. Like I'll eat that shit up, but I can't remember much about these books. All I remember is that I didn't really enjoy them. And I also think maybe the time jumping back and forth confused me a little bit. So yeah, these are an unhaul. Next up, I'm unhauling One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read this in a romance vlog, which I'll pop up in the cards in case you want to watch it, and I go into a little bit more detail then, but I have a really mixed thoughts on this book. I definitely think that I saw potential. I just think that there was too long of a time spent. This is a romance book and a kind of a love triangle, but too much time was spent on her childhood and not enough time was spent on one of the 2 men. And I think it was, I think it impacted how I felt about her choice of who she chose, because we spent so much more time with one of the love interests than the other. And I think that didn't make, I just wanted to get them to get to know both love interests as equally as I could, but I think I was so biased towards one because I got to know them so much better than the other one. And I just feel like this had really good moments of beauty, and it was a empowering story of a woman having strength and moving on and living her life despite the grief and the pain that she's been through, and having the strength to continue on. And I really loved that side of this book, and there were some really moving moments with that, but I just feel like some moments were so rushed and some moments were so dragged, and I think I should say the pacing was all over the place. So this was a book that I could have potentially loved, but I didn't, unfortunately. I think I rated it like 3 stars in the end, or 3.5, something like that. I don't think her old romances are for me, but her historical fiction books are definitely for me, and some of my favorite books are her historical fiction. So I'm disappointed that I didn't like her older stuff, but yeah, I think she definitely found her niche with historical fiction rather than just contemporary romance. Next up, I'm unhauling Alex Michaelides' The Maidens. This is the same author as The Silent Patient, which I unhauled in another one of my unhaul videos. I'm now 2 for 2 for absolutely despising Alex Michaelides' books, like with a passion. So it's a sign to never pick up a single one of his books ever again. So this is like a thriller set in Edinburgh, like university. And we follow a woman who has gone to uni because her niece's friend has been murdered. Wow, this was bad. I hated this book. I felt like the author was just trying to show that he's really intelligent. So he was writing like a professor character and would just randomly throw in like literary references and like philosophers' quotes and stuff that I felt like had nothing to do with the plot. And I didn't think were necessary for creating the setting. Like, I understood we're at like an old British university. Like, I understand that's the vibe. I feel like you can get that vibe across with the descriptions of the university and the campus, and I can understand the kind of vibe from it being at a university like that. But yeah, random like philosophy like quotes were just like thrown in there, and to me they really felt like the author was just trying to prove he was smart. I don't know, I think I'm biased against this guy. I seem to have a huge beef with him for some reason, maybe because I don't like his writing. But yeah, I found the reveal not that surprising. I feel like maybe it was trying to say something about men in power and taking advantage of that in terms of vulnerable students, but I don't know, it felt all over the place. It was not thrilling at all. There was a romance in it that was not at all convincing to me, and it just felt really douchey. And yeah, that's how I describe his writing style, was like douchey. So yeah, I really didn't like this book, and I never recommend anyone read Alex Michaelides because I have a one-sided beef with him and I don't like his writing. Next book I'm unhauling is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie O. I said this in my review, I think, but it's so disappointing because the cover is stunning. This, I can't even remember. It's a magical feminist retelling of a classic Korean legend. And I picked up this book because the blurb says it's perfect for fans of Miyazaki's Spirited Away, which is one of my favourite films because it's fantastic. But this was not fantastic. This is about a girl whose brother's like betrothed is promised as a sacrifice to the sea god. Every year in this village, a woman is thrown into the water as a sacrifice to be a bride for the sea god, and she jumps in because her brother jumps in after his bride, and she gets pulled to like, I don't know what it was called, like the spirit world or something. And then it's kind of a romance story, which was so unbelievable because the main female character and the romantic interest barely had any interactions the whole book and barely spoke the whole book, and we were supposed to believe that they were like each other's one true love. And I just felt like there was no build up, there was no getting to know each other. They were just kind of like, oh yeah, we're in love with each other. And I was like, since when? You barely know each other. You barely interacted. How do you know that you're in love with this person? And yeah, it's just one of those books where I'm like, I hate how there's these books with like a main female character and everyone loves them. Everyone immediately, like, without knowing them, is like, oh, you're such a great person, I'm going to do anything for you, and they just have endless friends all of a sudden. I'm like, how? You don't even know this person. I don't know if I described that well enough, but maybe someone knows what I mean. Like, all of a sudden, not necessarily that everyone's in love with her, but she seems to make these connections very quickly that are very convenient for the plot and convenient for people to suddenly want to help her when they barely know her. Yeah, this is one of the most unbelievable romances I've ever read, and I think this was just a little bit too YA for me. The next book I'm unhauling is called To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. I genuinely cannot remember a single thing about this book. Like, I genuinely can't remember anything about this at all. it clearly shows to me that it was not a great book because it's so not memorable. And I can't tell you why I'm unhauling this. I remember not enjoying the book. I think it was just a very mid-average, unimpressive book. So I think that's why I'm unhauling it, but I genuinely can't remember a single thing about it. Next tree I'm unhauling is Blue Exorcist Volume 1 to 3, the manga series. And don't get me wrong, I'm not unhauling manga because I don't enjoy it. I do enjoy manga, and there's quite a few I found that I enjoy, and it's definitely getting me into anime, which is great. I just think they're a silly thing to own if I'm not, you know, having the space for a whole manga shelf, because as you guys know, like, manga volumes, there's like hundreds and hundreds of them sometimes, and it's just such an expensive collection to have. Like, it's not like a book series where there's 3 books and your series is done. This, like, there's like 20, 25 volumes. I'm like, that's so expensive, so much money, and like takes up so much space. So I think I'm going to be really selective about the manga series that I actually collect. I think Spy Family is one I'll definitely collect because I love it. It's so wholesome. JJ Kaisen is one I'll definitely collect, but I definitely think in the future you'll see more mangas in my unhauls. It just does seem like a waste of money that I bought volume 1 to 3, but it's not a series that I'm adoring that I need to have the whole collection. I think in the future manga is going to be a majority library thing. I wasn't super impressed by that series, I don't think. I think I'll maybe reread volume 1 before I unhaul it and see if it is something I want to continue on with, and I would do that at the library. But yeah, this is not a collection I need on my shelves. These next 2 books I'll do together because again I don't have much to say about them. But first up, I'm unhauling The Near Witch by V.E. Schwab. I thought this was really bad. This is obviously one of V.E. Schwab's earlier works, maybe her debut. It's not her debut, I don't think. Maybe it is her debut. Actually, this could be her debut book. Anyway, it's not good. This is like a mystery. I can't even remember what it's about. Oh yeah, it's about a boy. There's Lexi's like finds this stranger, a boy that seems to fade like smoke that appears outside her home on the moor at night. And children in the area start disappearing from their beds, and this shadow boy is kind of, yeah, he's the suspect, and she works with him to try and figure out who he is and where the children have gone. I thought the writing in this was really bad, but again, it's her debut novel. I find that I'm now having such a mixed experience with V.E. Schwab. The Darker Shade of Magic trilogy, I've read book 1 and book 2 maybe, and never finished it. I should finish it. I found absolutely incredible. Vicious and Vengeful, incredible writing, but her other newer stuff is just not as good, and I just find that it's either really hit or miss with me with V.E. Schwab, and lately it's been more miss than hit, which is disappointing. Yeah, this is signed 2, I think, which sucks because I met V.E. Schwab years ago. Yeah, it's signed, but it's not personalized with my name, so someone else can have the signed copy. Yeah, all I've got to say about this book is that the writing was really poor. The other book I don't have a lot to say about is the reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. Again, like V.E. Schwab, so hit and miss. Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy, incredible. 10 out of 10, so intense, so quick paced, so fun, love it. And then all of the recent stuff I've read from her, that being Holly Jackson, I've hated. So again, I feel like maybe one hit wonder, Holly Jackson for me. This is about a girl and her mother went missing and she reappears. I found the reveal to be really unsatisfying and really unbelievable, and to me the ending just felt like a rewrite of the ending of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, kind of the plot of the final book of that. So without spoiling, I don't think the ending was that original of an idea, and I was like, oh, she's just kind of reusing the idea from that, which I didn't appreciate. Like, give me some originality. So this book was so disappointing. I think this was the first book I read after the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, and I honestly don't think I'll ever enjoy a Holly Jackson book other than the Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Yeah, this was really disappointing because I was expecting to just eat it up. So yeah, disappointing. An easy one to finish off, All Systems Red by Martha Wells, the first book in the Murdered Bot series. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely adored this book. I loved it so much, but I audiobooked it, and I definitely think this is a series where you absolutely need to listen to the audiobook. That's just how you're meant to enjoy this book. I don't think I would ever physically read this series, so this is not a series that I need to collect on my shelf, because if I reread it, which I am as of filming, I'm audiobooking it, so I don't need this on my shelf. Not that it takes up a lot of room, but it's just one series that I'll never complete, and it'll be weird if I just have this one book on my shelf. And yeah, I don't need it. I will always audiobook these series. Highly recommend you read the Murder Diaries. They're absolutely fantastic. Those were the 31 books that I'm unhauling from my shelves. I'm really glad that I've finally gotten around to filming this so that they can leave my room. They have been sitting in a pile next to my bed for probably about half a year now, some of these. So I'm so glad I finally filmed this so I can start donating them to little free libraries in my area and make more room for beautiful new incoming books that I'm going to love. Let me know in the comments below, have you read anything that I'm unhauling? Did you enjoy the book? Have you unhauled anything recently? What is your kind of criteria for unhauling? Thank you so much for watching this video. Give it a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you would like to see more of my content. I will see you in whatever the hell I post next. Bye!